Hi, and welcome to the Pain Points podcast. I'm your host, Christian, and today we have a special guest. We have Kayla Jordan. You may know her better as the Herbal Painter NH on Instagram. So Kayla, welcome to the podcast.
How's it going?
Good. So, obviously I found you through Instagram as the Herbal Painter NH. So, let's just start there. Talk about, why the name, why the Herbal Painter? Because you're not painting with herbs, right?
No, I'm definitely not. I get that question a lot. I'm actually going to be going through like a rebrand essentially. To kind of get away from the Herbal Painter, but I was literally the Herbal Painter because I sold Herbalife shakes, and that's how that started.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. So are you still doing that as the Herbalife stuff?
No. I was basically doing it for they give you a discount, right? So I was like, well, I drink the shake, so I might as well brand it so I can get the discount.
Right. No, that's cool. So it was a multi-level marketing thing that you had going on the side to get a discount, and you just kind of used it as your branding. So That's cool.
It's a very anticlimactic answer.
No, I mean, hey, most answers are.
Yeah.
I got chased by a bear. No, I'm just kidding. I've been following you for a couple years. I actually first came across your profile through Pro Image.
Right.
And they're based out of Connecticut. Is that right?
Nope. They're based out of New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. Okay.
Yep.
But now you're currently working for ZK Painting?
Yep. And they're out of Waltham.
Yeah. So like the Boston area?
Yep.
Nice. So, we're going to come back to that, but I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of reference as far as how people how your name would come familiar to them.
Right.
So how did you start in painting?
My dad just put a brush in my hand, right? I think that's the story for most painters. We watched someone we were close to do it, and we were like, wow, that looks kind of neat. So let me try to dabble in that. My first paint job was I worked at the paint department at Lowe's, and kind of got an intro to paint and tinting, and spent time with contractors and DIYers, and it kind of got me excited to do more of that.
So when your dad first gave you that paintbrush, are we talking before or after high school?
Before, yeah.
Before?
Yep.
Okay, and then now you're working in the paint department at a big box store post high school?
Yep.
And that's kind of keeping that realm. Okay. So where does after Lowe's, where does that lead you?
So I was I was kind of a lost soul, right? So I'm like, what do I do with my life? I'm not going to go to college. It's not really for me. I don't, test great. So what am I going to do? And I somehow ended up at Hanscom Air Force Base as a preschool teacher. That was my diversion, this is what I'm going to do. And then I moved to Florida after that and worked at Edison.
What part of Florida?
Fort Myers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's further south than me. I'm in Central Florida, so just north of Orlando. So, no, that's cool.
Yeah. So then I worked for Edison College at their child care center. And one of the parents came in and was like, oh, my husband owns a construction company, and I know that you have done drywall and some construction, and would you want to work part-time? He does flooring. And I was like, well, I've never done flooring, but let's go. So I worked at Infinite Construction there doing finished carpentry and painting baseboards, that kind of thing. So that was more paint, more hands-on work.
Yep, a far cry from running after Rugrats all day.
Oh yeah, it's definitely different.
Yeah, and it's so funny as I've been on construction outfits in the past, and as soon as somebody finds out that that you can identify what a paintbrush is, and you can hold the right side of it in your hand without getting paint on it, all of a sudden you become the painter
you're
for the
painter.
construction outfit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not the only one who's come across that.
Yeah, we're all familiar with that.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so you're in South Florida, and you're doing some construction.
Right.
How'd you from not knowing carpentry to now you're being put on? Were you like an apprentice?
Yeah.
Were you the only carpenter, or were you like a junior carpenter?
I was just an apprentice, right? So basically my first 6 months there, I literally hauled boxes of flooring upstairs, brought them upstairs for the guys, that kind of thing. Just like, building character.
Right.
As my boss said.
Front work.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
So, and then it was like, okay, well, you've lugged boxes enough. Why don't you take the baseboards off and then clean the caulking off of them and pop the nails? And then I did that for a couple of months. And then it was like, well, we can install new baseboards and you can do that. Like, just watch this guy for a minute. And then it went from that to flooring. And then it was like, well, you're really good at the painting. So why don't we just have you do the install of the baseboards and then paint them and finish? And I'm like, all right. So kind of just like progressed through that.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. What's next? What happens next for Kayla?
So then I moved back to Rhode Island. I'm from Rhode Island. It's my hometown.
Okay.
I moved back home. I was in Florida for 4.5 years. Go back home, and I was just kind of kicking around. I think I worked at Under Armour for a little bit, just like as soon as I got there, because I needed a job.
Right.
And then from there, one of my friend's dads owned a painting company, like a small one, him and one other guy. He was like, oh, I need a painter. And I was like, well, I'm a painter and I miss working with my hands. So like, let's do that. So I worked for Pitka Painting in Rhode Island. For a little bit, we worked with designers and did some cool projects. And that's kind of my intro to like higher level work, not just like, landlord special work.
Right. So now we're moving beyond just baseboards. We're doing full. Now, is this when you started getting into? So what product line were you guys typically using?
We used Benjamin Moore there. He was like a Regal Select guy, So we used Regal Select, and we did a lot of satin and pervo on trim, like oil base, spindles, and all that tedious, like meticulous stuff. And that's kind of when I realized, like, the people that I was working with were like, oh, it's really tedious. I don't like it. And I was like, oh, that's my favorite part. Like, I really love the meticulous, like the prep and painting each spindle and painting each riser. Like I was really into that. So that was kind of like a spark of like, oh, I really like doing this.
Right. That higher level. Yeah. It's funny because a lot of times, as you're going through that and like learning more about painting, I know for myself that I'll look at something and I know if I just prep it a little bit more, I know how much of a difference it'll make at the end. Right. And to most people, they're like, why are you still sanding that? Or why are you putting another, coat of spackle on it? Like no one's going to, but like when you know, right? Right.
Good is never good enough, right? Like it could always be better. So if it doesn't blow the budget and it doesn't, blow the project, just do the little extra.
Well, as a painting business owner, though, like, why not do a little bit extra? We'll get a better review from our client, and we're not making any money on the job, but the project looks fantastic. Right. But so you are now working for a smaller outfit. Yep. And you're starting to get a love for the craft. Yeah. More into the details. And where's that leading you to next?
So then I met my wife and I was like, let's move to New Hampshire. So I moved to New Hampshire. And again, just kind of, I need a job.
Just on a whim.
Yeah, I was really fluid younger. Like I always used to say, I don't want to vacation somewhere. I want to live somewhere. So I would just like move and like be there for a couple of years and explore and work. And, was nice, adventurous, I guess.
A traveling spirit, right?
Yeah, definitely.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Wanderlust.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So I moved to New Hampshire and found a property management company out of Nashua, New Hampshire, and did like wood rot repair. It was a lot of exterior repair work. So then I did more carpentry there, and got like super familiar with tools and repairs and Bondo work. And I kind of like elevated in that way. There wasn't a lot of painting there. I was mostly doing carpentry and repair work. But I learned like a lot. It was, you know, a bunch of older, like old trades guys, kind of like, come here, let me show you how to, you know, do this, take you under the wing and show you all the little tricks.
So kind of, can you go into that a little bit more detail? Because I think there's a prevailing like idea of the like quote unquote old timer, and we don't have to necessarily put an age to that, but like the old school mentality of just treating someone kind of like all you get is grunt work, you're never good enough, and they don't want to share those secrets with you, but you're alluding that they welcomed you. How did that, from the standpoint of the experienced tradespeople on the job, going in and then now you have some experience, but you're willing to learn, like, how did that relationship go, or what did that look like in the moment?
So I think the older tradesperson they're a little apprehensive, right? Because you're a woman in the field and, you know, I got a lot of like, oh, you don't have to lift that, I'll do it. Right. So it's a lot of just, I was like proving that I could. And then I think once I proved that I could, it was like, oh, like, this is a tough chick. Like, you know, she knows what she's doing. Let me, you know, show her the stuff. And I think it was a lot of like, they seen me a lot like a daughter figure.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe soften them up a little bit in my advantage to opening up more and showing me more of the little secrets and hacks. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of times people get hung up on, a male apprentice versus a female apprentice, or, just somebody being brand new or being seasoned. But really, it sounds like in your case, they were able to identify a hard work ethic and are willing to learn.
Right.
And that kind of settled everything. Right. And I mean, I wish more people had that mentality like these carpenters did. Because at the end of the day, we just want people with great attitudes and a good work ethic, you know, like the days of like busting our tail for just barely any money, those are long gone. Right. Like we're professionalizing, the painting industry and, you know, having, even following your journey, having somebody who doesn't directly own a painting business, but you own what you do. And I mean that in the fact that you take pride in it. Right. You're always posting reels and videos and kind of showing stuff of what you're doing. And I think that that's fantastic. And I wish more people had that pride in what they do. Right. And that's going to be a beacon outside of all of these painting contractor owners, or these painting company owners, you know, busting their tail, working on all these projects, to be able to see that there's more to the painting industry than just learning the craft and then owning a business. So you're with the carpentry outfit. You're doing a lot of wood repair and learning the craft from that standpoint. What's next?
What's next is another totally random thing. I worked for an aluminum casting place. It was like 2 minutes down the street from my house. I was like, I can walk there. This is perfect. So I just popped in one day and I was like, hey, I'm Kayla. I have no experience, but I can work with tools. And I seen on the paper, he just wrote good egg. So I started working there, doing finish grinding. So I'd get the part, it would be cast, and then like the bigger parts would be lobbed off, and then I'd like fine grind everything to like, they use like those little toggles to like a fraction of a centimeter. And I learned a lot about like surface depth and how to make a smooth surface and how to blend, and which obviously translates into paint, like in drywall and, in brushing technique. And there too, I also realized that I'm not just taking random jobs, right? I'm building different skills that I can take with me into my like ultimate goal, which is to be like a high-end painter. So I can recognize those skills that I'm building from all these other jobs that I've taken. And now that's like a superpower, right? Like, oh, I can use this and I can use this. And I just have a bag of random trades, but I can use them for what I'm trying to do later.
So you said all of these jobs that you were taking, that they're all feeding to your ultimate goal of being I think the best thing to describe it would be a master painter.
Right.
Which you definitely have mastered your craft, and kudos to you on that.
I appreciate it.
At what point did you realize that that's what you wanted to be, or that's what you wanted to do?
I've always wanted to paint. Like, even when I was at the paint desk, right? I would like go home and like, oh, this new product came in. Let me, test it on a chair. And like, I always wanted to paint. I didn't realize that I could make money, like livable money painting.
Yeah.
And I'm not I don't do paperwork, right? Which is why I don't have a business. So I'm like, well, if I'm not going to own a company, and so I didn't realize that I could just be a great employee and still elevate myself to get to a comfortable place by doing good work for great companies.
So when did that epiphany, so let me start off with this, do you believe that that's possible now, that you can be a master painter, earn a decent wage, and not own a painting company?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
So when did that epiphany actually happen along this journey?
I can't pinpoint it, right? Because I've always just like, it feels kismet that I'm a painter, because I just like always was like, yeah, I'm going to be a painter. Oh, I'll paint some. There was never like a point where I was like, I want to be a master painter. I almost like stumbled into it. Okay.
So stumbling into it, but this is something that's, we could say that it's something that you've been passionate about.
Right.
When you were looking at these quote unquote random jobs that you were that you've described for us, were you going into these jobs with the intention of, it may not be painting, but I can learn a skill that'll feed into this? Or was that happenstance?
It was happenstance, and I didn't realize it until the aluminum job, like the aluminum like casting job, that like, oh, everything I'm doing it's usable to what I want to do. And there had been, and I'll always like, coming up into everything, like I would take jobs that paid less money because I'm like, oh, but that's a skill that I could use, and then I become more valuable later. So it's not more money now, but eventually it's going to make me more money. So I did that quite a few times, like take a couple dollar pay cut so I can learn carpentry, take a couple dollar pay cut so I can learn grinding and surface depth. And I think the skills are more valuable than the dollar amount, especially when you're just starting.
Yeah, and nobody can take those skills away from you, right?
No, forever.
This is like, it's a paid training that you're able to take, and you had either the foresight or the luck enough to be able to take each of these skills and roll them in and compound them along the way, to get you to the point where you're currently at. I'll tell you what, like, I thought I knew a little bit of your story just based on following you, but like you're really, really impressing me with everything that you're saying about just like, it's really, really cool. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's really, really cool that it sounds like early on you knew the direction that you wanted to go. And I have to imagine that there was some part of you, whether it was conscious or subconscious, knew that these things were literally feeding you to get to that place that you were ultimately wanting to go. So I think that's awesome.
Right.
So, I mean, go ahead.
I mean, ultimately, right, like everybody just wants to be a somewhat successful person. And not going to college, and I got my GED. I was like, I don't just want to work at Dunkin' Donuts. Like, I don't just want to live in my hometown. How am I going to make it better for myself? And I'm like, well, the trades, they make, pretty good money, and I like working with my hands. So I think that we're fed in school, like you should go to college and you should, and then the trades is just so overlooked as like a reasonable way to make a life for yourself. And I see it less like with kids now, like being inspired by the trades. And I just hope that that's our job, right? Like, is to bring the next group of people behind us and make them passionate and make them want to do it and realize they can have a life outside of college.
Well, exactly. And if you get nothing else out of this podcast, I want to thank you for doing the things that you do. Cause, I don't know if we talked about this online or offline, but like your social media account has almost 2,000 followers, which I've been running my painting company for 7 years. I don't have that amount of reach. It's not like a comparison game, but like what an impact that you have and a stage that you have that you can share that message, and really, continue to inspire, because I'm sitting here as somebody who owns a painting company and thinking if my journey looked different, I'd want it to look more like Kayla's. Like, I love my life and where I'm at,
right? But
to be able to be considered by many as a master craftsman or a craftsperson, like, that's just awesome. So I'm really, really happy that you have put yourself in the positions that you've put yourself, learn what you've learned, and more importantly, that you're bold enough to share that, because it really is going to make an impact.
Yeah. Well, we hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we move off the foundry stuff, you said, without giving us like we don't have to go too far deep into it, but what kind of tooling and stuff were you using in order for this, the polishing? And you were talking about the porosity, or what was the term that you used?
Just like surface depth, that kind of thing.
The surface depth and stuff like that. So like,
right. So I had
that's curious.
I had just, it's like a little, I don't even know what the names of the tools were. But I had a pencil grinder. Like, it looks like a pencil. You put different tips on it and you can kind of like burrow into corners and, make corners. And then we had just flat disc grinder, hooked up to a compressor. You could sand it out. And then we had obviously bigger grinders, that we had used. And that was pretty much, the tool belt. A block of wax, put it on the pad and make your paper last longer.
Okay.
That was pretty much it.
Nice. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it was a cool job.
Yeah, for sure. Because when you first said foundry, I'm thinking like you're wearing this big like volcano-proof suit, and like with the Big Dipper and stuff like that. But like, yeah, and I was thinking, how's that going to fit into this whole career path thing? But no, it's more the detail.
That was the guys in the other room. That was the guys like 2 stages before me.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, typically these molds, in order for them to break them out of the mold, would be like 2-piece molds, and there'd be like a hairline, or not a hairline, but there'd be, slag around the edge, and somebody would grind that off, and then you'd fine tune it with the details. Nice.
Yep.
So, where'd you go after the foundry?
Pro Image. I ended up at Pro Image right after that. It's actually my wife's boss was roommates with Stephanie and
Okay.
had posted that she was hiring, and her boss sent it to me, and I was on my lunch break and I was like, oh, I would love to get back into painting. Like, shot Stephanie a text and was like, hey, like, maybe we can meet. And funny enough, like, it was like impossible. Like, our schedules were like, yeah, it's not going to happen. And we just like, it was like a month, and I was like, ah, it's probably not going to happen. And then I sent her my business card because I was doing side work, and I was like, hey, if we ever can make it happen, here's my business card. And she was like, let's meet today. Like, the business card, looks professional. So
For sure.
Right.
For sure. No, that's awesome. So what did it say on your business card?
It literally just said my name, phone number, email, and it said drywall, carpentry, paint. Like, it was super basic.
Nice.
It was like a stock photo of like a kitchen that someone else did, like that you can just buy from a business card.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that was my business card.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But again, it goes back to it seems like this is part of your personality, just having that boldness to take the shot, right?
Right.
No, that's awesome. So I've spoken with Stephanie a couple times in the past. Again, I know her from Instagram. When you first started working with her, was this Benjamin Moore Pro Image, or is this Fine Paints of Europe Pro Image?
Yep, it was Ben Moore Aura. That was like, our jam, and like Advance on Trim.
Yeah.
Those were our products.
Okay. And then at what point were you introduced to Fine Paints of Europe?
We did I forget the location of the house, but we did this house on like a hill in the mountains, and like the view was just like, impeccable. And it was this massive single story house, just like this huge giant stretch. And the homeowner wanted the exterior trim done in Holland Lac Brilliant, like the whole trim on the whole house.
On the exterior?
Yeah, whole trim. And then he also wanted the clapboards and everything done in house paint by Fine Paints. And Stephanie was like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to do that job. So that was like my intro to Fine Paints and oil brushing. And I brushed out all the trim, and we did a couple of doors, and I was like, oh, this stuff's amazing. It looks killer. And you can see the amount of prep that you put in with this product. Like, it was just like a beacon.
There's no cutting corners with that product.
Oh,
There's no hiding behind anything.
No.
Like, that's one thing that you have to like appreciate, is how quickly that product can either make you look really good or humble you really quickly, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I can't imagine, like, I have enough trouble with it, messing around with it in my shop, doing some sample boards and stuff like that, but to try to do it outside, that's just next level. That's awesome. So, so you're saying you started off with the oil products. Pro Image is pretty much known for doing the water-based eco.
Yep.
And why is that drawing a blank? Urolux on the walls.
Yeah.
Right. So they're typically, I at least know them, that they specialize in interiors, right?
Yep.
High level interiors. So what did that look like for you? Are you like in heaven now? Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
When that announcement was made that they were dropping Ben Moore and going to use this exclusive line.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. Everybody on the team was, really jazzed about it. And, we get the little badge like, oh, Fine Paint certified. And, it feels really awesome. And like the houses that we were working in with the product, like, you can't help but to be proud of the work you're doing, right? Like, it elevates you. Definitely. So yeah, we were all pretty jazzed about it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So at this point, with your personal Instagram, so do you have like a business Instagram and personal, or is it all wrapped into one?
It's all the same page. Like if you're on my Instagram, you're gonna see photos of my baby, and then the next
Yeah.
post is gonna be, a picture, a reel of a door. So it's
Right.
pretty much everything. And at that point, I didn't even know that you could link your like career onto your Instagram. Like I had no idea about the painting community, and I literally was clueless. And Stephanie was like, "Oh, do you follow this person on Instagram?" And I'm like, "No." She's like, "Oh, you have to follow these painters. Like it's super cool." So then I go home, right? And I follow these painters, and I spend like 3 hours just watching painting videos on my phone. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you can document this. Like that's wicked cool." And I like to make videos and edit. So I'm like, "Oh, I can marry these two things together."
Yeah.
And create content and like do it just because I'm passionate about it. Like I'm not doing it because I'm like, I have videos that have like 2 likes. Like I do it because I like to make the content. And when I realized that you could do that, I was like, oh, this puts even more pride in your work, right? Because you're like, I want to have that content that I can produce at the end, and you're more proud of what you're doing.
I totally understand what you're talking about. I remember probably about 4 months into like getting really getting set up with Instagram and trying to promote and things like that. I had a friend of mine comment, a kid that I went to high school with, and he commented on one of the videos and says, "I swear you just go to random places and just talk about paint. Like that's what you do for fun." It's like, I mean,
Yeah.
this is what I'm doing for a living, but like, I enjoy it. I came up through the trades, and I always wanted to be a framer because I thought it was awesome hauling the lumber,
Right.
swinging a hammer, cussing. Like I thought that was so cool, right? But I always kind of had that like attention for detail, kind of like what you could relate to.
Right.
And I always got pushed like further up the chain, like, "Oh, we don't need you on framing. We need you on doing this or that." And like push further down. So I was starting to do finishes and drywall and the floor install and
Right.
and the finished carpentry and all that kind of stuff. And then I kept getting pushed further back. "Oh no, we're going to have you do the paint." And it was funny. It wasn't until I actually started painting on a crew that I realized that all that other stuff that I was really, really hyped about in the beginning, it all gets covered up.
Right.
No, nobody sees it. So I think that's awesome. So here you're with Pro Image. You guys are executing on a high level, and you have this another epiphany that like I can share all of this stuff and take your artistic qualities, your life
Right.
and talents, your artistic talents, and be even more creative. Here's another medium that you can work with,
Right.
put the brush down, and now you're picking up the video camera or your phone and being able to do to share.
Right.
That's so cool. All right. So what's next after Pro Image?
After Pro Image, I went to a business called Pro Finishing, so like still pro, right? And it was shop work, regular schedule, regular hours, same place, same time every day, which was, a nice change of pace. And I did industrial coatings, like when you go to the gas station and you see like the cover and it's like, it's got like texture on it and it's like painted. We did stuff like that, but then we also did like I did like custom rims and like specialty projects. But for the time that I was there, I literally just fine-tuned spraying. Like I sprayed 10 hours a day, 40 hours a week, spraying. No prep, no tape.
Wow.
There were different sectors that would prep everything, that would mask everything, and I literally just got it and sprayed it, and that's what I did.
Oh, wow. So it's more like a production line style to where you're just focusing on that one task.
Right. Essentially,
So
on like a small scale.
Yeah.
There was like 7 employees there.
Right. Right. I mean, we're not talking about like that you were working like the Ford Motor Company
Yeah, no.
production line, but instead of you having to start with the product and prep it and tape it and do all those steps, you were able to hyper focus on one element of the finishing or refinishing product or setup.
Right.
So, what type of setup did they wind up having with these industrial coatings? Were you using like an airless?
We had a pressure pot.
Okay.
Yep, a Binks pressure pot system, and then we had open face boots.
Okay.
Yep.
I still have never seen an open face booth in person. So to me, they're witchcraft.
Yeah.
Because I don't fully understand the airflow. And if you try doing a Google search on how the airflow of an open face booth works, there's nothing out there. There's no information out there. So if you're listening to this and you have a good video on that, send it my way because I would love to understand the witchcraft that's behind this. So open face booth with a pressure pot.
Right.
And you said that you were doing industrial coating. So you're talking like, are you talking like 2K polys and things like that? Or
it was a hodgepodge of different products. Like I did a lot of the, like we had like space paint. So it goes on like airplanes. We had like military contracts that we did 2-part paint. I wouldn't say it's 2K. It's like high build, like, I don't even know the kind of paint it was. It was Sherwin Industrial high build. And then I also did ceramic coating there with Cerakote, a little bit of powder coating there. Like, so it was like all different mediums, and products. And that's also the first place that I started mixing paint. Like before I get a can of paint and then I go and I use it.
Ready to use.
Right,
Yeah.
Pop it open. But this was like my intro to like the science and like being in the lab and, really checking viscosities and learning about catalyst and that line of products.
Yeah. So what was your initial reaction to that kind of stuff? Did that excite you? Were you a little intimidated by it? I could imagine you having a lot of different feelings coming from a ready to use product where you open the can and dip the brush, right?
Right. Yeah, I was a little excited, but mostly like super anxious about it. I was like, oh my God, like it's so specific and like I'm not like super good at math. So I was like, oh my God, all these measurements. But really, once you start going at it and you have the measuring cups, it's like 4-to-1 and it's like there's lines. Once you do it a couple of times, you're like, oh, okay, this isn't too crazy.
Right. Yeah, you just follow the cheat sheet on the side of the cup.
Exactly.
Nice. That's awesome. So you're doing industrial coatings, various materials, various projects, various substrates. What's next for you?
Then I seen ZK Painting had an ad on Instagram, and I'm familiar with ZK Painting and Zach, and we've chatted through the internet a couple of times, and I've done side work with Philip, the vocational artist, like in my personal life, and also Jessica from Alternative Finishes. I've done work with her on the side, and that's kind of where I met Phil. And so I messaged Phil, and I'm like, hey, I see this like hiring thing, like, you want to like work together? He was like, oh yeah, you should definitely apply. So nice. I text Zach and I'm like, hey, like, what's up, essentially. And he was like, oh, let's go. He's got such a great energy, right? He's like, oh, let's go. Yeah. You want to work here? Like, that's awesome. Like, let's do this. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up in that situation, just through, and this is all through Instagram connections, right? Like networking and knowing people, and not just having, like, when I have conversations with other tradesmen, I don't typically talk about paint, right? Like, I'm like, hey, like, what's your favorite place to eat? Like, I like to have like really personal conversations and like get to know you as a person, as opposed to just like, what size tip do you like to spray out of,
Yeah.
And that,
How many times can you have that conversation, right?
so many still, but you're not really building a relationship like that, right? You're just like Q&Aing. And I want to I'm like an interpersonal person. I want to get to know you and build relationships. So that's all of this kind of happened through Instagram connections.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So what are you doing currently with ZK?
I do a lot of detail sanding and the pro finishing. I left there because I miss sanding. I miss the detail and the meticulous, and I miss all the other steps besides just the 10 seconds of painting. So I'm doing a lot of that, and I just started spraying there. So I'm doing a lot of primer spraying and things like that, but mostly I'm doing a lot of the prep and substrate preparation, stuff like that.
So you're working, you're full-time in the shop,
right? Yeah.
Not in the field. Okay. Cool. No, I think that's awesome. I remember I was following, I came across you because Pro Image would repost you. So here you are as an employee, taking pride in your work, wanting to just share with the world the stuff that you do, and your employer is encouraging that by reposting and giving you kudos and props for what you're doing.
Right.
And then I'm not really on social media too much, scrolling a lot. And then one day I saw you in a ZK uniform, and I was like, what'd I miss?
Right.
So So no, I think that's awesome. Just hearing your journey, how probably looking back on it, you were probably a little more intentional than you're giving yourself credit for, with just building these skills over time that's led you to where you're at. You're a great example of what makes this industry great. So really, really cool. I know we said we had a hard stop, so I just want to be respectful of your time. But before we sign off, is there any question that I didn't ask that you wish I would have asked?
No, I feel pretty good about it.
Okay.
I feel like it was a fun little journey.
Yeah. No, it's awesome, and I'm glad. The whole heart behind reaching out to you, and the whole heart behind this podcast is there's a lot of podcasts out there, especially if you start getting with PCA and content like that you have these hyper successful companies that, they're like, oh, well, do it this way. Work on the business, not in the business. Work on the business, not in the business.
Right.
And at a certain point, you're like, well, what does that look like to me, the small guy who's by themselves?
Right.
And or what if, why is, in order to grow and to have a good life and still do something that you love in the painting industry, why do I have to be an owner to do that? And the whole point of this is to either communicate that you can still be professionalized and sustain at a small scale, but also in order for our industry to grow, there has to be more career paths than apprentice, painter, business owner.
Right.
And you've nailed that. You work for in different industries, not just with house painting.
Right.
You've been able to do that. You've mastered your craft. You work for master certified crafts or master certified painting companies for, quite frankly, the most difficult product line to work with that's available to us. And you make it look easy. And I think
that.
I really just want to make sure that I try to just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. don't be afraid to share your stuff, get that message out. You're an inspiration to me, and I'm sure to many others with everything that you do. Last thing. So when I have an actual industry professional on here, I'm trying to do this like quick little like lightning round of questions.
Yeah.
So there's no context, there's no background on it. I'm just going to ask you like A or B, and you just got to say it to whatever your answer is.
Right.
So first question is tape or no tape?
No tape.
Okay. What sander do you prefer, Festool or Mirka?
It's a hard one. Festool, just with my gut.
All right. All right. Water base or oil?
Water base.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions that I got right now.
Awesome.
Kayla, you nailed it. This was awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you got a little one at home.
Yeah.
And it's after work. But I appreciate your enthusiasm, wanting to talk a little bit about paint after hours, and really just sharing your story, because we need more stories like that in order for this industry to grow. Mm-hmm. You've found something that you're passionate about, and you made the stand of the determination of, how can I make this work for me, for my family, for what I define success as, without having to open a business? Right. Because your story might look very different had you gone that route.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So. And I'm going to leave you with like a really profound quote.
Let's do it.
Confucius said, when it's obvious that the goals cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the action steps. Like, pivot.
That's good.
Pivot. Keep your goal and find a way to get there without adjusting that.
I couldn't have had a better sign off, even if I did some research before this podcast. So no, that was fantastic. There's always a way. There's always a way, and you just gotta put a little bit of thought into it, and I think you've definitely done that. Kayla, for all the people who may not know or are following you yet, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at the Herbal Painter _NH for now.
Awesome.
Until I change it.
I'll include a link in the notes, in the show notes for this, and when you change it, maybe we'll have to have you back on if it doesn't automatically update, and we can just chat again. Yeah. This was a real pleasure. I thank you for your time, and it's really nice getting to know your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Awesome. My pleasure.
All right.
Keep up the great. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Good night, Christian.